Hi, my name's Alex, and I'm a voice teacher with My Music Match. And as you can see, I love Disney. Disney songs are some of my favorites to assign to my students because there's such a great opportunity for storytelling. And so in this video, I'm going to go through how to practice the songs of the Disney princesses. What to do, what not to do, how to healthily produce these sounds. And then I'll also take you through a timeline of the stylistic differences between the princesses of different eras. I'm going to do a little bit of singing demonstration in this video. However, I've also made a Spotify playlist of the princesses in chronological order. So if you like, while I'm talking about a certain concept, you can pause me and play the track, and you can hear what I'm talking about. So let's get started. So the biggest misconception that a lot of people have about singing this music is that because it requires a strong supported head voice, you have to do a lot of warming up in your head voice right away because that's what's going to sound the worst. When in fact, that's actually going to tire you out and make it more difficult to sing songs like this. So the first thing you want to target when you're warming up is exercises that target breath support. Because when you have a solid foundation, it'll make singing with support in your upper register so much easier. I'll show you a couple breath exercises I like to do with my students. One of the first, I do this with my younger students, is this one. And a lot of times I'll have them do it in a mirror, and I'll have them put a hand right here low on their body, and they'll sing, ha, ha, ha. And this is great because you can see where the contraction is happening with those staccato notes. If it's happening low in your body, in this abdomen area, ha, 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 you know you're doing it right. Whereas, if you can see in your mirror that your shoulders or your chest are moving when you're doing it, ha, 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 you'll be able to fix that. You notice when my shoulders moved, there was a lot more air in my sound as well. Other breath exercises I'll do involve longer phrases and being able to maintain my posture and my ribcage expansion as I begin to run out of air towards the end of the phrase. And of course, as you get better at these, you can make the notes longer, so the phrases will be longer. Another important thing to note about the music of the Disney princesses is that it's a lot more akin to musical theater than pop music. One big thing that means is that typically you don't have any glottal onsets when you're singing the songs of the Disney princesses. Most voice teachers teach that glottals aren't great technique anyway, but in pop music, they're used a lot as a stylistic choice, and it's something that makes sense in that genre. But you're going to hear, when a Disney princess sings, very balanced, clear onsets and no sudden stops of the vocal folds at the beginnings of phrases. You're also going to hear very clear, enunciated diction. Another thing you are not going to hear are ornamental scoops and riffs and runs like you would in pop or R&B music. There is an exception. We'll get there later. But for the most part, you're going to hear a very clear sound, mostly unaffected other than natural vibrato. So now I'm going to get into a stylistic timeline of the princesses from different eras of Disney movies. I like to separate the princesses into 3 different eras of vocal sounds. The first being from the late 30s to the 50s. That's the Golden Age princesses. Then the second is our Disney Renaissance princesses. That's late 80s through the late 90s. And then the third is our modern day princesses from the 2000s to today. So our first princess sound is the Golden Age princess sound, and I call it this because it's akin to the Golden Age of musical theater. So typically this means you're going to have a more classical sound, tall vowels, and vibrato throughout. So for example, if I'm going to sing Aurora, I'm going to sound like this. I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream. So you notice that I really didn't go through those diphthongs. For example, on the word I. When I say the word I, there's an E sound at the end. I. But when I sang it just now, I know you, you pretty much just heard AH. I know. And you hear a little bit of the diphthong at the very end. Now, this is something you struggle with. Something you can do to practice is to take all the consonants out and sing only on the vowel sounds, because this is going to make it easier not to go through those diphthongs as you're getting to the consonant. So you heard pretty much those pure vowel sounds, and it'll make it a little bit easier to choreograph what those vowels are supposed to feel like. Our second group of Disney princesses is going to be our Disney Renaissance princesses. So that's the late 80s to the late 90s. Now, the Disney Renaissance was kicked off with Little Mermaid's theatrical release in 1989. And it's called a Renaissance because it basically revitalized the commercial success of Disney animation. Now, vocally, this sound is going to be somewhere between our modern pop-oriented sound and our golden age, more classical-oriented sound. What I mean by that is you're still going to hear vibrato throughout the sound. You're going to hear open, clear vowel shapes, but the vowel shapes are going to be a little bit more lateral and conversational sounding. Not quite as much as in a more modern sound, but you're going to hear a little more smile in my sound. I'm going to have lifted cheeks. I'm going to have a little bit more nasal resonance. For example, if I go to sing Part of Your World, which if you can't tell, Ariel is my favorite princess, it's going to sound like this. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I've got who's its and what's its galore. You want thingamabobs? I've got 20, but who cares? No big deal. I want more. So you can hear in there that it's very similar to the Aurora sound, but it's just slightly more conversational sounding. Our third group of princesses is going to be our modern princesses from the 2000s and the 2010s. Now this sound is going to be characterized with less vibrato, more lateral vowel shapes, and more forward placement and nasal resonance. Now it's important to note that when I say lateral vowel shapes, it doesn't mean that I'm compressing my sound. It doesn't mean that I'm adding any jaw tension here to make it sound more lateral like this. It's just the difference between ah and ah. When I say the second one, it's a little more conversational, but I still have my soft palate raised, so there's enough space in my mouth for that sound to resonate and come out in tune. For example, if I sing Rapunzel, it's going to sound like this. 7 a.m., the usual morning lineup. Start on the chores and sweep till the floor's all clean. Polish and wax, do laundry and mop and shine up. Sweep again, and by then it's like 7:15. So you heard vibrato on the word clean only, but that was about it, and it was a lot more lateral sounding. Now, you may remember in the beginning of this video, I mentioned there being an exception to the no riffs and ornaments rule, and that would be Tiana, because Tiana's story takes place in 1920s New Orleans, which means her vocal sound is going to be a lot more influenced by jazz and blues and gospel. The ornaments don't go crazy when she sings, but you'll hear it a little bit. For example, I remember Daddy told me if fairy tales don't come true, you gotta make it happen, it all depends on you. So you notice that there were a couple scoops in certain notes, and it's a more chest belt type sound rather than our very mix head voice type sound. Now that we've gone through our whirlwind tour of princesses through the decades, the main thing I want to leave you with is that while it's important to understand these stylistic differences, it's even more important not to force yourself to sound like a recording that doesn't sound like you, because it's going to create unwanted tension in your jaw, in your neck, and other parts of your body. For example, if I have a 10-year-old student singing Once Upon a Dream, they're likely not going to have a big sound with lots of vibrato because they're very young and their voice is still developing. That vibrato is something that happens naturally as you develop the solid foundation that your teacher is working on with you. If you try to force it, it's going to create tension that's actually going to hinder the production of it. On the flip side, if you're trying to force that very forward nasal placement by creating tension to make it happen, it's going to be way harder to sing that kind of music. If forward placement is something you struggle with, here's something I like to do to work on that. I pick a closed vowel like E or U, and I sustain on one pitch, and I go as far back into a closed, covered sound as I can, a dark sound, and then as far forward into a bright, nasal, obnoxious sound as I can, like this. So that's just a way for you to play and experiment and see the different timbres your voice can make. Once you've done that a little bit, then I like to take that closed vowel and practice opening up to an open vowel while keeping the same placement. Once that gets easy for you, Singing like that is going to be a piece of cake. Thanks so much for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you were able to learn something about singing like your favorite Disney princess. See you later.